In 1974, the CIA's most ambitious covert operation wasn't destroyed by Soviet spies. It was destroyed by second-rate burglars looking for petty cash in an office safe who accidentally grabbed the wrong folder. But to understand exactly what they destroyed, you have to go back to 1968, to a submarine that went dark. In the spring of 1968, the Soviet submarine K-129 left its base in Kamchatka for a routine combat patrol in the Pacific Ocean. On board, a crew of 98 men, 3 ballistic missiles armed with nuclear warheads, and cryptographic equipment that constituted a top-tier state secret. The submarine was supposed to check in at a designated time. It didn't. The Soviet Pacific Fleet launched a massive search and rescue operation. Dozens of ships, months of scouring the ocean. The result? Nothing. Eventually, the Soviet command accepted the loss and called off the search. K-129 had vanished. The Soviet Navy had no idea where it was. The United States did.
SOUS, the Sound Surveillance System, a highly classified network of hydrophones strung along the floor of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans, had picked up the acoustic signature of an explosion in March of '68. Analysts studied the data. The coordinates of the source were triangulated with terrifying precision. K-129 was lying on the floor of the Pacific Ocean, roughly 1,500 miles northwest of Hawaii, at a depth of 16,000 feet, 3 miles straight down. In Langley, the headquarters of the CIA, the people in charge of technical intelligence looked at those coordinates and thought about one thing. Sitting on the ocean floor were 3 Soviet ballistic missiles, Soviet cipher machines, Soviet code books, the communication manuals of the Pacific Fleet, all of it in one place, at known coordinates, and the Soviets had no idea where to look. The question the CIA asked was simple, yet utterly absurd. Can we raise a submarine from 3 miles deep? The engineers brought in to assess the problem said that no one had ever lifted anything from that depth. The technology simply didn't exist. The task was far beyond the limits of human capability in deep-sea operations. The CIA replied, "Then we need to invent it." The project was codenamed Azorian, and this is where the story shifts from a mere technical challenge into something else. The intelligence agency didn't just invent a machine, it invented an entire non-existent global industry to use as a cover story. The problem wasn't just engineering, it was logistics and diplomacy. To lift a submarine, you need a highly specialized ship. You cannot build a ship of that magnitude in secret. It will be seen, it will be registered, it will require a massive crew, and it will dock at public ports. Soviet intelligence tracked U.S. naval activity in the Pacific with obsessive attention. An American warship hovering over the exact coordinates where K-129 supposedly sank is a flare you cannot hide. Therefore, the ship couldn't look like an American warship. It had to look like something else entirely, something so eccentric yet so plausible that the KGB would read about it in the morning paper and decide there was nothing to worry about. Someone at the CIA came up with a solution that, for all its audacity, relied on a flawless understanding of public perception. At the bottom of the ocean lie manganese nodules. This is a real geological fact. Small clumps of minerals that form on the seabed over millions of years, containing manganese, nickel, cobalt, and other valuable metals. In the 1960s, a few scientific papers had pointed out their potential commercial value if the technology to mine them ever existed. The technology didn't exist. The deep-sea mining industry didn't exist. No one had ever mined manganese nodules on a commercial scale. The CIA decided that this was exactly what their special ship in the Pacific would be doing. All they needed was a frontman, someone eccentric enough to make such a wild venture seem plausible, rich enough to justify the colossal investment, and reclusive enough that no one could ask him direct questions. Howard Hughes was the perfect man for the job. By the early 1970s, Hughes was simultaneously one of the most famous and most unreachable men in America, an aviation pioneer, movie producer, and defense contractor. Yet he hadn't been seen in public for years. He lived in isolated luxury hotel suites, surrounded by a tight circle of aides, never giving interviews, never meeting the press. His extreme eccentricity and reclusiveness were universally accepted as a given. If Howard Hughes announced he was building a deep-sea mining company to harvest manganese nodules, who would question it? An eccentric billionaire blowing a fortune on a futuristic vanity project. It was entirely on brand. The CIA struck a deal with Hughes. The exact terms remain partially classified, but he provided his name and his corporate infrastructure as a shield. A company called the Summa Corporation, affiliated with Hughes, was used to place the order for the custom vessel at a shipyard in California. The ship was christened the Hughes Glomar Explorer. Newspapers covered its construction. The press was ecstatic. The reclusive Hughes was building a fleet to mine the ocean floor. Maritime law experts began debating the legalities of open ocean resource extraction. The United Nations actually held meetings regarding the legal status of deep-sea minerals. Several other corporations announced they were also looking into the deep-sea mining business. The CIA conjured a fake industry out of thin air, and the entire world bought it. Soviet intelligence read the same newspapers, analyzed the same articles, and came to the exact same conclusion as everyone else. A crazy American billionaire was throwing his money at a sci-fi pipe dream. But the Glomar Explorer was not a mining ship. On the outside, it looked like a massive 600-foot research vessel. On the inside, it housed a structure with no precedent in naval history. In the center of the hull was a massive moon pool, a giant set of doors that opened directly into the ocean beneath the ship. The mechanisms designed to operate at depth would be lowered and raised through this well. The ship itself was equipped with dynamic positioning, allowing it to hold its exact coordinates in the open ocean, regardless of wind and currents, a technology that was bleeding edge at the time.
But the centerpiece was the lifting mechanism, codenamed Clementine, a gargantuan mechanical claw, technically a capture vehicle, a massive steel frame rigged with spring-loaded grappling arms. Its wingspan was comparable to a football field. It had to be lowered on a 3-mile-long string of steel pipes, which would act as both the physical tether and the conduit for control signals. It had to reach the ocean floor, straddle the submarine's hull, and grip it with enough force to pull thousands of tons of dead weight to the surface. The engineers designing this system were working with calculations that had no real-world precedent. Nobody knew exactly how 3 miles of pipe would behave under that kind of tension. Nobody knew the structural integrity of the submarine's hull after 6 years in the crushing abyss, and nobody could conduct full-scale test runs without blowing the cover story. Everything relied on math, and the blind faith that the math was right. In July 1974, the Glomar Explorer arrived at the coordinates above K-129. Soviet naval vessels appeared on the horizon. This wasn't unexpected. Soviet intelligence monitored unusual activity in the Pacific, and the sudden presence of a massive American ship in an empty stretch of ocean drew attention. The Soviet ships moved in close. Soviet sailors stared through binoculars. The American crew cheerfully waved back and continued pretending to mine the ocean floor. Inside the belly of the Glomar Explorer, a different reality was unfolding. The pipe string began its descent through the moon pool. Section by section, each pipe 30 feet long, threaded together with agonizing precision to ensure the colossal structure remained controllable 3 miles down. It took time,
days of non-stop work just to lower it. Clementine descended into the abyss. At a depth of 16,000 feet, the water pressure is measured in hundreds of atmospheres. The temperature is hovering just above freezing. Visibility is 0. The claw was controlled via acoustic signals and mechanical commands sent down the pipe string. The operators on the ship were effectively flying blind. They couldn't see what was happening on the bottom. They could only interpret sensor telemetry and sonar pings. Despite everything, Clementine found K-129. That alone was an unprecedented triumph of human engineering. Finding a specific 300-foot object on the bottom of the ocean in pitch blackness using acoustic guidance while Soviet spy ships circled overhead. Time was running out. Any delay increased the risk of exposure. Clementine's steel claws closed around the hull of the submarine. The lift began. The pipe string started its agonizingly slow ascent. The winches strained under a load no machine had ever borne before. Thousands of tons of metal, the sub's hull, the waterlogged compartments, the dead weight of the ocean, began to pull away from the seafloor where it had rested for 6 years. For hours, the lift proceeded flawlessly. Then, the operators heard a sound, a violent metallic screech that traveled up the 3-mile pipe string like a giant tuning fork, then another, and then a chorus of snapping metal that every engineer in the Glomar Explorer's control room instantly recognized. The metal was tearing. As the sub was being hauled up, several of Clementine's grappling arms fractured. The load limit had been exceeded. Maybe K-129's hull was far more degraded than the math predicted. Maybe the weight distribution shifted. Maybe human math simply couldn't account for every variable 3 miles deep in the ocean. The submarine snapped in half. The aft section, the jackpot containing the ballistic missiles, the cipher machines, and the bulk of the classified equipment, slipped from the claw's grip and plunged back down. 3 miles straight down, back into the abyss they had just dragged it out of. Clementine surfaced, holding only the bow of the submarine, roughly 1/3 of the hull. There were no missiles, no code books, but there were bodies. The remains of 6 Soviet submariners who had died 6 years earlier. The American military conducted a formal burial at sea, on the deck of the Glomar Explorer in the open ocean, with full military honors spoken in both Russian and English. A video recording of this ceremony was later handed over to the Russian government when the project was partially declassified. The CIA had spent a sum that various sources estimated several $100 million 1974 dollars, the equivalent of several billion today. The result was a chunk of metal missing the primary intelligence targets. A decision was made to launch a second expedition. The technical capability was still there. They could refit the Glomar, build a stronger claw, and go back for the aft section. Project Azorian was going to get a second chance. It never got that chance, for a reason that had absolutely nothing to do with Soviet intelligence, engineering limits, or geopolitics. In early 1974, right around the time the Glomar Explorer was operating in the Pacific, a crew of ordinary burglars broke into an office in Los Angeles belonging to one of Howard Hughes's companies. They were looking for cash. Smash-and-grab thieves usually have very specific expectations when cracking an office safe: petty cash, jewelry, maybe some bonds. They found documents.
The documents outlined something called Project Azorian. The burglars didn't understand intelligence operations. They were looking for a quick payday. The papers just looked like bureaucratic leverage. They shoved them into bags along with the rest of the safe's contents, perhaps thinking they could use them for blackmail, or perhaps having no idea what they held. Eventually, those documents found their way into the hands of journalists. The exact chain of custody remains murky, but the historical fact is undeniable.
The deepest secrets of the CIA's most expensive covert operation were leaked to the press, not by a KGB mole, not by a whistleblower, and not by a cyber hack. They were leaked by two-bit burglars looking for cash. Journalists started asking the CIA questions. The agency found itself backed into a corner it never anticipated. If they confirmed the story, they would be publicly admitting that U.S. intelligence was secretly salvaging Soviet nuclear hardware in international waters, and that the entire Howard Hughes deep-sea mining industry was a state-sponsored lie. At the height of Cold War détente, the diplomatic fallout would be catastrophic. If they denied it, the journalists had the stolen documents to prove it.
CIA Director William Colby personally met with the editors of several major publications, begging them to kill the story for the sake of national security. Most agreed for a while. But in February 1975, investigative journalist Seymour Hersh broke the story in the New York Times. The dam burst. Faced with questions they could neither answer with a yes nor a no, the CIA's lawyers and press officers crafted a response that would alter the history of media law and government transparency forever. We can neither confirm nor deny the existence of the information requested. Not, the documents are classified, not, no comment. This highly specific phrasing, the refusal to acknowledge whether the information even existed in the first place, meant the CIA didn't have to formally classify the documents, because acknowledging them would validate the leak. The documents were placed in a state of legal purgatory, simultaneously existing and not existing.
The Glomar response became a foundational legal doctrine in American jurisprudence. It is used to this day by government agencies responding to Freedom of Information Act or FOIA requests when merely confirming the existence of records would compromise national security. A cornerstone of modern legal secrecy, born not from a brilliant intelligence triumph, but from a botched burglary in L.A. The aft section of K-129, the piece holding the nukes, the ciphers, and the manuals, is still resting on the floor of the Pacific Ocean at a depth of 16,000 feet, 1,000 miles from Hawaii. Nobody ever went back for it. Technically, deep-sea technology has advanced light years since 1974. Modern ROVs, or remotely operated vehicles, advanced materials, and modern navigation allow for deep-sea salvage operations with a precision the Glomar engineers couldn't even dream of. Yet officially, no attempt has ever been made to recover the rest of K-129. Howard Hughes died in 1976, 2 years after the operation. He died on an airplane en route from Mexico to Texas, suffering from kidney failure in a state of severe physical emaciation after years of total isolation. His role in Project Azorian remained officially classified for decades after his death.
The Glomar Explorer was leased to the Global Marine Corporation and actually used for offshore drilling. A ship built as the ultimate Cold War spy tool ended its life as a commercial oil rig. In 2015, it was sold for scrap. The CIA partially declassified Project Azorian in 2010. According to the unsealed documents, the agency considered the operation a partial success despite losing the payload, because proving that such a breathtaking covert operation could be executed right under the Soviets' noses was an intelligence victory in itself. The Soviet Navy had no idea the Americans were trying to steal their submarine until they read about it in the New York Times. What the CIA actually recovered from the bow section remains classified. Officially, they claimed there were no missiles and no code books. What was there is a secret they still refuse to share. $1 billion in modern money. A fake global industry invented out of thin air. A custom-built ship. A gargantuan mechanical claw lowered 3 miles into the pitch-black abyss. And in the end,
A crew of Los Angeles burglars who just wanted some quick cash and grabbed the wrong folder. They weren't stopped by the KGB. They weren't stopped by Soviet spy ships. They were stopped by a microfracture in a piece of steel 3 miles deep and a few guys who broke into an office in the middle of the night. And that leaves us with the ultimate question, one that history has never truly answered. The aft section of K-129, packed with nuclear missiles and Cold War cryptography, is still down there. The technology to retrieve it today is vastly superior to what existed in 1974. If nobody has officially tried to raise it in 50 years, is it because the intel is too old to be valuable? Or is it because there is a quiet, unspoken gentleman's agreement between two superpowers that some things are better left exactly where they lie?